All right, everybody. We're going to start the Assembly Transportation Committee. We are now on the record at 12:04. Let's go around, identify ourselves for the record. Eric, can we start with you?
Yeah, Eric Croft.
No, I'm sorry. Sorry.
I'll be last.
Yeah.
Transportation inspector.
Very good.
Dean Gates.
Forrest Dunbar.
Suzanne Gratz.
Eric Croft again.
Can we go through the audience? How many people here? Yellow cab, okay.
Kim Baby from Yellow Cab.
Yellow cab. A bull sign. Okay, that's enough. All right, so today we're going to be talking again about this ordinance that will reform parts of the taxi cab industry. My intention is to have this transportation committee meeting and then another work session, and then we'll have public comment, not this coming meeting, the meeting following, the assembly meeting following. There haven't been major revisions to the ordinance since the last time we had a presentation from Mr. Gates. However, I think there is a lot to talk about. And Mr. Weddleton has read through the ordinance and has a number of comments, and I would like to sort of start with his thoughts. John, are you able to just go through the ordinance, or do you have a thought you want to do?
I think, and I just scratched notes on this, so if we go page by page, maybe. And think if anyone else has something on that page, just kind of raise their hand. Some are just questions, it's not big deals. So looking at,
Page 3 of 40. Everyone should have
3 or 40 or 41, I would raise your hand.
40. You might have the older version. That's okay, though. We'll figure it out.
Close. Okay, 3 of 41.
Eric, you
Down
have,
at,
there's comments right there.
This section A, and its new wording is a method for review and approval of rates for vehicles for hire. And I just want to clarify, so we're setting the rates.
Through the chair, no, we don't. There have been, on vehicle for hires, there have been in code minimum rates that they could charge for many years. What this does, it just makes a change for the commission to develop a new process to review and approve it.
And but we would set the rate then?
It would either, we would set some kind of a minimum or maximum somewhere, somehow in there.
Wait, so, I'm sorry, I got confused there briefly. I think this is in, Dean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what's happening here is we are generally trying to get out of the rate-setting business, and we get rid of maximums elsewhere. However, we wanted to preserve it just for curbside,
Right.
and that's what we're trying to do here. Is that right, Dean?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, now these.
And the limo service is kind of a separate thing. We just took away their minimums because we thought that's the only mention of limo services, I think, that.
So, for curbside service, set maximum rates.
Yep. Right now, we set maximum rates for all taxi cab services.
And then you continue that sentence with a method for review and approval of rates for vehicles for hire.
D.
Oh, no, 2, no, that's the second item, 2.
If I may. So my understanding for Mr. Webster can correct me if I'm wrong. Vehicles for hire, like I guess there was a van transporting people for bikes to Pop Top, for example. They have a specific purpose, but they would propose what their service is going to do and what rates they would charge, and the commission would approve that and approve the rates they were going to charge. And since we're getting out of fixing rates and stuff, this was intended to not have the commission approve rates, but to have a method that review well, what's the vehicle for hire application, saying what they're going to do, they can say what they're going to charge, but it's not approving the rates. So it sounds a little bit convoluted perhaps, but current code language just says rates for the vehicle for hire. We don't want to improve rates. So it says approve a method for the commission to regularly get applications for vehicle for hire service and approve those applications. That's
Well-
saying improve the rates.
So I guess my question for Eric and for Dean, maybe with John Kenny, what if we were to get rid of that too? So we would only be setting maximum rates for taxi cab curbside service and a little bit on allowable fuel surcharges. That seems kind of redundant if we're allowing them to charge whatever they want. What would the practical effect of removing that language be?
And I apologize, I don't have the current Title 11 with me, but under an application for a vehicle for hire permit, there's a series of criteria that they have to submit along with a business plan that shows what they intend to operate, the kind of vehicle they intend to use, the rates to be charged, and how they're different from a cab. And that has existed in the past because of the limited entry of the cabs, and part of convenience and necessity. It was designed so people couldn't end run limits on cab permits and then apply for and receive a vehicle for hire permit. And so that's how the overall vehicle for hire rate structure applies to. So they would submit, for example, most of all of our Medicaid transporters, for their rate, they simply state, we are charging the state authorized Medicaid reimbursement rate for transportation, which is like $38 per trip. And so, and again, it was designed so they didn't come down and say, okay, we'll charge $6.50.
So these are really, this language is really for non-cab, vehicle for hires, okay. Does that answer your question then, John? I mean, I guess it's.
So we are setting rates for them. So you're just gonna relook at how you do it, but it is basically set, review and approval of rates. So will we set the rate, or they just show us what we wanna charge this, and you go, it's within these guidelines, so yes.
Well, again, they've had to show how they were different from a cab, and so what they do is their application would go to the commission for approval, and on commission review, they would look at the rates and look at the rate structure they were, seeking to charge, and really the goal was to see there was not a direct cab competitive rate.
So what if you were to remove the word rates, and just have method for review and approval for vehicles for hire? Because we're trying to get out of the rate game, but we understand how, given that there's a special set of rules for taxi cabs, you can't have people operating as taxi cabs, but not actually be taxi cabs, right?
And how about the van that takes people to Flat Top, is that covered by this?
Yeah, they do. Actually, we've got a flat top mountain bike tours. There's actually two of them that come in that are covered by this. And,
We got an email from someone who complained that they're doing that, following all the rules and paying all the fees, but then Uber drivers are doing the same thing.
and they are, and we get that, and actually, there's a few of the tour operators that do comply, and I can tell you, cabs have benefited from that every year, because you get tourists that come in, they've done the Denali train, they've done the deal, and they find out, oh, they've got 8 hours before they gotta go to the airport. And they'll go right in and hire a cab and say, show me a moose, I wanna find a moose, or I wanna go to Flat Top and hike it, or I wanna go see it. And it's been a good kind of side of component of taxi business. And yes, Uber, having been authorized for service in Alaska, is doing the same thing.
I mean, as a cab driver, I'm sorry, my name's Kim Pinky. As a cab driver, I've had people get in my cab and say, take it to the Wildlife Conservation Center, pay for my way in, and take them, walk through it with them, and then bring them back to town. I mean, because they a lot of times people would rather do that than a tour service, because it's more personalized, and you're getting a local versus someone that comes in from out of state to do tour guides. And I've had a lot of people that say that they've come back multiple times over the years, and they would rather ride with somebody who's from here and have it be more personable and get that local's perspective, on everything, rather than take it to our service.
I understand all that, I just want to know where we set the rates on.
Yeah, I mean, I would be in favor of removing the word rates from that sentence. Maybe that will be in the S version then, because then it just says, you know, we are going to allow the commission to review and approve vehicles for hire, to make sure that they're not getting around our taxi cab. But we in general are not trying. We're trying to get out of the rate setting business, although we're not getting out of it. All right, John, do you have another?
Maybe a few more.
Fuel surcharge amount, it's got a rate issue.
Yeah, it's true.
Just moving on, I guess we ready.
Yes.
So my page 5, and I'm working off of the
If I could add one
version that
thing,
was introduced.
Hold on, John.
There was some discussion of deleting that part, A3, and, you know, I think deleting it might work, because the code has the application requirements that Mr. Lester described. It only has what they have to do to put it up here. Do you want me to kind of quickly read out what is required for the legal hire application?
No, it's okay. Why don't you and I
Say anything about it here.
Why don't you and I and Mr. Weddleton maybe talk about that offline afterwards? Let's move on to the next issue.
Okay, next one is just clarification, I think, from Eric. So my page 5, this is 11.10.080A, about halfway through. The new word said inspections shall be conducted by a licensed and certified mechanic. And a mechanic friend of mine said that he gets licensed, but the shop he works in gets certified, so he doesn't get certified. Is that correct?
Yeah, through the chair, I have a note on that somewhere. Alaska does not license or certify mechanics. To be in the Association of Certified, like mechanical, you can get a certification through a test to like be a brake specialist, or a certificate, but we don't have any licensed or certified mechanic. So it would have to be like a licensed mechanical establishment, a repair shop, or.
Your brother-in-law.
Well, that's a concern that's gonna happen on this.
Right.
There'd be a
So
licensed establishment.
how is it done now?
Well, how it's done now, because of problems in the past, so I'll say that, is we put out a bid. Egan's Auto had it for many, many years, and then those regulated wanted better opportunities, so we worked hard to put a new RFP out, and it goes out now. Express Lube actually has the contract. So it's put out by us. The fees established is $65 per inspection,
Yep.
and they go through the 1110-085 list, you know, to ensure that the vehicle is, you know, it meets all of that criteria.
So I guess this is the issue, right? We want to be less restrictive than that, allow them to go to a variety of locations. But it sounds like that if there's no licensing and certifying, then what's to prevent them from going to, you know, their uncle who's good with cars?
Perhaps some alternative phrasing. I think licensed and certified is just kind of standard in a lot of industries. So there wasn't a lot of problem using that term. But perhaps something like a qualified mechanic. Qualified could be better defined through regulation if needed.
So I guess that's an interesting question. Eric, would there be some way that you could do that, or how would we determine that a mechanic is qualified?
Well, we can't tell if a mechanic, and I think I know from the administration's perspective, our position is leave it alone. Half, a good chunk of the cab owner groups have body shops and, you know, deals and things like that, and so there's been a great deal of work. $65 isn't much, and
Right.
to cut the inspection to just once a year of, it's met all the municipal RFP guidelines for independent review. And
Wait, but you said something, so you said most of the taxi cabs have their own shops. Are you saying that they, or a lot of them do, the bigger ones, you saying they can't use their own shops right now, they have to use?
Well, they can, but that's why the assembly's gone through and we've been reconstructed vehicles, because they're going to their own shops and disengaging the airbags on reconstructed cars and getting in other accidents with passengers in them, airbags aren't working, and, you know, they had them welded together, and so there has been some evolution to safety that we get about. The Korean community, who have a few dozen permits, have a couple of their own shops. The Albanian community has a couple of their own shops. It really goes through the Hispanic, you know, there's a lot that are involved in this industry that goes at. You know, Taylor Taxi has their own mechanic and does all their own work down there in their own shop, and so.
And we're worried that, I guess you think there's sufficient evidence that it's not a great idea to have people do their own inspections.
It's not, and we've gone through this, we've really gone through this one, and we feel the criteria works, and we're helping. The idea is to try and lower the burden, and we're actually doing that by lowering the number of inspections.
Right.
So, and plus we get an independent review that it's been checked out and it's okay.
So does anyone else have any comments or thoughts on that? I'm willing to take that out if the administration feels strongly about it, and go back to the original language.
Rest of
The industry?
do you guys have a problem with the way inspections
I mean,
are now?
it's not $65, it's $75 for inspection at Express Road, which is not terribly burdensome if you look at it only doing it once a year.
Yeah.
It's the 2, 3, 4 times a year that it gets to be a bit much, you know, so I mean, and honestly, you know, from a company standpoint, I would rather know that the cars are safe. And, you know, because when a customer has a problem with a cab, be it mechanical, driver, customer service, you know, how long it took to get there, how long they sat on hold, what have you, whenever the customer has a problem, my phone is the one that rings.
Okay.
You know, so.
Well, unfortunately, there's no one here, no permit holders here, but I think I am sufficiently persuaded that unless somebody stops me, I will take that out in the S version. Thank you, John. You want to keep going?
Page 6. And this is, added the words regarding taximeters sealed or certified. And is there certified mean something very clear?
Yeah, Chair, actually, that has been informed from it's a real 10-mile name, of the U.S. Metric Measurements, Weights, and Standards have guidelines that have come in place where, with the checker cab has now gone to a new dispatch system that's all on the computer, and the rate is set and locked by a central computer, and so there's guidelines for sealing that. And they've all.
So I have a question pertaining to that. So soft meters are allowed now?
They are.
Yeah, okay.
What is that?
Soft meter is the, so you know, like when you get in a cab and you see the actual piece of equipment, it's a meter, it's, instead of being there and separate, it's within the computer screen that the driver uses.
Oh, yeah.
That's called a soft meter.
Okay, page 7. This new section C. And I just want to make sure we can get these. Are these drug and alcohol tests? They exist?
Well, this is another one. We're supportive of the elimination of the pre-license and application drug tests. You know, I mean, we get it. But we have a municipal contract through risk management and legal. They put out a bid for post-accident, reasonable cost, you know, testing. And the president, Beacon WorkSafe, is the present municipal contractor. Our position is that be deleted because we pay for the, well, the permit owners ultimately pay for the test. Title 11 requires them to apportion the cost, but we order the tests, and this is then asking us to go out to every drug testing lab, wherever, and see if they meet our criteria so that we can send one over. Our preference is to, again, because the applicant parts are being removed, and our authority would then be reduced to post-accident reasonable cause, that the language just be left as it currently is, and we use our municipal bid contractor.
Oh, I want to see if the,
I don't have anything to add at that point.
Does APD require a test kits in an accident?
Well, APD can live test, and they do in some cases. I was called to work at 5:30 in the morning 2 days ago on an asphalt test. Well, they'll do field sobriety, they'll do field checks, and then they call us in, and that fault, and we order the post-accident test. And that's, you know, I have the ability to do that from home or anywhere
They don't do
else.
that as a general rule unless there's a fatality or something.
Well, we do it, well, they do it anytime there's either a pedestrian involved, a bicycle involved, or they have their criteria. Our criteria rests if there's a passenger in a car, if you're in an at-fault accident, or receive a citation as a result of that incident, you know, then we will order one. And we had 2 positive test results come back in 2017, one for alcohol and one for a barbiturate. It wasn't marijuana, but barbiturate. So the system really does work. And it's worked.
with regard to C then, they have to be done by a testing center that complies with this regulation. Does the municipal, where we currently have that unique contract, does it comply with this federal
Yes.
regulation? Okay. So I don't see how this conflicts with your requirements.
Well, because it goes, because if you get back in there, it's a drug test can come from anyone,
Right.
right? It can come from anyone. And
So why-
So it's sort of,
If we say,
the language is fine as long as we can still choose on a post-accident reasonable cause basis.
so I guess our intention here was to let them choose, maybe there's a cheaper contractor, but you want to set it at 1 and make it go to only 1, is that right?
Well, we're right, because I'm not saying there's not a better one out there. I mean, there might be, but you know, the entire municipality goes out periodically and rebids these things to provide services to the municipality.
Yeah.
And within that RFP the municipality puts out is after-hours procedures and policies that are used,
Yeah.
and that we use, you know, and it's all set. And I don't know why an applicant or someone subject to Title 11 that's being ordered to take a post-accident, a reasonable cause test by the municipality, get to choose where they want to go take their test.
Well, it's different than mechanic though, because in mechanic, there was no way to be licensed or certified. Here, there's a federal regulation that basically makes it so you'd be a complying testing center.
Right, which there's
Right.
more than one in Anchorage.
Okay. Yes?
But I guess my interpretation of that is that the fee
Yeah.
for running a post-accident or cause test is not applied at the time of the test. It's included within the renewal fees in the dispatch, right? So again, so the city is paying, so the municipality is paying for the drug test, so I can see their point of not wanting him to go to A, B, C, D, E, and F instead of just going to A.
So that's interesting, so it's not paid by the recipient up front. It's paid for by the community.
All by us,
And
that's
then
correct.
you recoup it during renewal?
Yes.
What if they don't renew?
Well, they lose the permit.
Well, they lose the permit, but do we just eat the cost?
Well, we eat the cost for 2018, it was about $6 a permit.
Oh, okay.
It was the apportioned cost. We look at all the bills we paid for the year, and then when we do the renewal letter, and that goes out in November, we assign them the 3 costs. We rebid the chauffeur training program, so here it is, your permit, your chauffeur training, apportioned cost, and we've added more permits, so those costs have gone down, you know, so. And then we're reimbursed, essentially, we're reimbursed at the end of the year.
But we set the renewal fee, right? We've been setting the renewal fee and the initial fee set at, I guess I'm thinking of the permits of the chauffeur. Okay. All right. Okay, well, that might be worth taking out then. Talk more about that. Do you have something?
Well, I was going to say, I think the practical effects of this change is if the transportation inspector orders, or there's an accident, orders post-accident incident drug test, that now would be the permitting the drivers on where they go. It just has to fit a DOT compliant facility. They can choose where to go and find a facility, whatever rate, rather than the status quo, just the TI, say you go to this place, they got a contract with, and it's all paid for. So I think that's the practical difference here. Does that sound correct?
Well, it does, except I only heard half of what you said.
If this is adopted the way it's written in the ordinance, it would mean if someone has to go for a post-accident drug test, or the TI order them to go get one, you don't tell them where to go, they decide where to go. They can shop for a facility with the available facilities that meet the criteria and pay whatever rate they find is best. But it just has to meet that Department of Transportation federal regulation criteria, right? So
Yeah.
that's different than now, where we have one place to go and pay for it, and since the driver goes, they pay for it.
But that's what we
Instead of the
oppose
place they
this.
go.
Yeah,
I think
that's
that's the
what we
practical
object
difference
to.
that
Well, I
is
think,
out.
Dean, I think what they're saying though, and what I guess I didn't realize, is that the muni pays for it actually. Not the
Chauffeur.
driver, not the driver.
And it's designed to protect the, people do fake drug tests all the time. You can get fake urine, fake whatever,
Sure.
anywhere. And so, it increases our burden, to go through this and let a chauffeur pick where they want to go. When as a municipality, we go out as a municipality and we look at these things. Like, do you meet these criteria? These are what we want, and we need the ability for 24-hour testing, and it goes, and it really should stay the same.
Okay.
I have a
Yes.
question about the pre-screening. So if you guys are gonna take the pre-screening drug test out of the equation, does it then fall to, because as a company, like Yellow Cab, so they're independent contractors. So in order to drive a Yellow Cab, do we have to then send them and tell them, hey, you have to go get a drug test before you can drive here?
If you want to.
So, I mean, cause I don't want somebody that's all hopped up on meth to go and drive a cab and have it, be yellow. I don't wanna deal with that.
When I was an employee for Fred Meyer company policy was we had to get a cheek swab.
Right,
It
but
wasn't
you
required by
didn't, but you
the
didn't
government.
pay for it.
That's an
The
interesting question.
company
I think
paid
company,
for
yeah,
it.
Fred
So
Meyer
I'm
probably paid
wondering,
for it.
because they're not our employees, they're actually independent contractors,
Yeah.
who would the financial burden then fall on? The chauffeur or Yellow Cab?
Isn't that a negotiation between the two of you?
I
If
don't
they want
know.
a job, they
That's-
can bring you a service.
Well, I think it is. I mean, it depends on you guys. You can impose requirements on independent contractors to allow them to use your service, and you don't have to let them use your service if you think they're on drugs. And that would be
Right.
my point. And you could either say, you must pay for your drug test, or paying for your drug test is a service we provide. Please drive for us, not Checker. That would be my.
Right.
But my intention is that the government does less of it and it's done
Right.
more within the industry. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. John, can you move on to the next one?
Next one I think is more of an edit, so I'm looking at page 9, and it's this section, D, there should be 3, but it says during a period of 12 consecutive months, that part, and it's more of an edit. I look at this and say, why isn't this underneath the prior section C? And I would give you my good solid reasons for that, but I did this 2 weeks ago.
It's okay.
But it's more just an organizational thing. It seems like it doesn't fit here. Number 5, they make that number
draft question.
Yeah, so I don't know.
If I may,
Yes, Mr. Gates.
subsection C is action against permits, and subsection D is action against dispatch licenses. So that's current code. That's just how they separated them.
Okay, never mind.
But
Okay.
Okay. Oh, yeah, C is against permits, D is against, yeah, okay, that makes sense. All right, go on, John.
Okay, my page 12, and this is under 11.24.020, section A. And I guess that last sentence I have some beef with. Transportation inspector shall refuse to accept any application unless it pertains to a non-transferable or wheelchair accessible taxi cab permit. And I would note that that's already covered in B.
Yeah, is
It's
this,
minor editing, but
Yeah.
just
So,
you delete
we-
that, you're already covered.
yeah, we've made so many changes. Is this now redundant language, Eric?
Well, it may be a little before its time, though, or from a previous iteration, because we didn't get rid of the transferable permits.
yes, that's exactly right. We have transferable permits. They're called legacy permits or some other names, but those were terminated in 1994, in February '94. And so after that, the municipality only has accepted applications for non-transferable permits and the wheelchair accessible taxi cab permit. So transferable permits aren't, we grandfathered the ones that were in existence, 156 of them.
It was 157.
157. So, and those are the ones where you could transfer them, and on the secondary market, they'd go for $150,000 and so forth. And the municipality had to, it said they shall approve a transfer. Somebody had to apply, sure they qualified to receive it, but the municipality couldn't say, you just have to approve those transfers from the secondary market, And so we switched to non-transferable permits. And so any new permit applications after '94 were non-transferable.
Yeah, so I think it is a little bit
So I
of
think-
a message of tail.
Right, I think I missed that detail as well. Okay, so
Yeah.
ignore that.
Okay.
I have a question as far as
No
the
problem.
non-transferable permits go. Currently, the interpretation is that you must be a chauffeur to own a non-transferable or handicap permit. And so what about the person that wants to make themselves, say, a limited liability? Can they, in that limited liability's name, purchase a non-transferable or wheelchair permit? And then if they can, when they go to get the permit, does an officer of that LLC have to be a chauffeur person? A person with a chauffeur's license? I mean, I'm a little confused on that.
Eric, do you have any thoughts on that?
Why don't, well, she asked that, and presently with all the non-transferable ones, they've had to be in the name of an individual. We had even previously sought, a lot of the legacy permits have been transferred to trusts and everything else, and we had tried to stop that. Our position would be, even under these changes, it has to be in the name of an individual
Okay.
on the application.
An actual person with a chauffeur's
Actual
license,
person.
not a legal person like an LLC. You could still set up an LLC to receive profits and that kind of thing, right? But the LLC itself can't hold the permit. Person that's holding.
Well, you can, and I would ask, and I know that would be a better conversation for another day, because there's litigation going on right now from an accident. And it involves that very issue of the liability of the person versus who had set up an LLC actually, to operate it. And it's come into question, and it's a very good question right now, and we would say no, but we may come back after that decision is reached.
Okay. Being litigated. John? And by the way, everyone, people could please speak up a little bit. I got in late last night on the plane and my ears started popping. I can barely hear you guys.
Okay, my outside voice, page 12. And this, just moving down a bit, section B5, we have some new wording. And one of the things, okay, a signed statement,
I'm sorry. where-
section B.
B on page 12 still, right?
So
Five.
if someone comes in, they sign a statement that they will be responsible as a principal, define that, for the chauffeurs retained or employed to drive the permitted vehicle, the quality of service they provide.
So which one are you on?
B5.
B5, it's new wording underlined.
Line 27, 28, 29.
So I'm not responsible as a principal, so I'm not sure what that means in this case.
I used that term, principal, thinking of principal-agent relationship. And the permit owner owns the right to operate the taxi cab. There's chauffeurs, independent contractors, whatever, there are agents that operated under the that actually drive it around. So that was my thinking in choosing the word principal. It's not a necessary term here. This could just say be responsible for the chauffeurs retained or employed instead of as a principal.
Okay, yeah, if we don't define that elsewhere, then I'm always in favor of more simplicity, so let's take out that word.
Okay, so having done that,
Okay.
now what does this mean though?
Okay.
We're saying quality of service, so this means the permit holder they lease it to someone, which won't happen much, but it will fine. But at any rate, so they're
Still is
leasing
the
it.
case in most cases.
And do we define quality of service somewhere, or it's really up to them? This is my permit, if you're gonna ride for me, I want you to wear a tie, or maybe you don't, blue jeans are fine, they get to decide, right?
Well, through the chair, so our regulations define a standard of conduct, including appearance, no shorts, no sweatpants, no things like that. But what I understand this language to be as the permit owners are paid for a chauffeur training program, for years and years, and as the chauffeurs go through this training program, there goes all over all the Title 11 rules and regs and conduct and how to run the cab and operate the cab. And because that's going away, the intent is you can be an independent contractor, but if you're going to drive my cab, these are the rules you're going to abide by. And I would just like to bring that up for one, and that's a big. This assembly has heard a lot about contracts and agreements and not coming in, and it's important in mind as we get there. The permit owners in 1994 went to Juneau and asked for an independent contractor, for everybody to be independent contractor. And so when they got it in 1994, and I was there at the time and remember the debate, state law, AS 23, requires anybody that drives a cab or is compensated by customers who's written, and this is the deal, who's written contractual agreements with owners of cabs, permits, or dispatch services are based upon flat rates and not based on a percentage to share the receipts, and whose written contracts provides in place no restriction on hours worked. So the contract's supposed to provide for these responsibilities, and that even that contractual relationship is an independent contract, which gets back to the principal. The remark that would make the principal as the owner, at any level of that. What's happened though is it's evolved into a cluster of nobody wants a contract, nobody wants to write anything down, nobody wants it, and that's where it comes from. So what I have always tried to look at iterations of Title 11 is they should complement the requirements in state law that require these things, and that's what that does. That's what we get that one.
This gets to a broader conversation John and I were having though about whether or not dispatch companies could hire cab drivers as employees, and I know they're all independent contractors now, does the state law preclude, it allows independent contractors, does it preclude employees? Does it preclude a normal vertically integrated company where you hire people?
Actually, I've been a non-turner, but I would know because you can do anything not prohibited by law. There's no prohibition that says you can't have a dispatch company and hire your own drivers and have them drive for you as employees.
Are the dispatch companies forbidden to own the permits though? I mean, is that the kind of break? The permits are sort of in between the dispatch companies and the drivers.
Well, now you're going back to a pre-1994 question. Under the legacy process, anybody could own them. A dispatch company could have gone in at that time and acquired 100 of those old legacy permits if they wanted to do that.
Right.
As we evolved into non-transferable permits, we have been evolving with the one permit, one owner concept, and that's,
So I guess now we've got a lot more, we're, at the end of this whole process, we're gonna have a lot more permit holders who are themselves drivers, because it's much cheaper to get a permit. Could dispatch companies hire those people directly as employees?
well, I think, my interpretation.
Well, because then you could fire them. I mean, so.
I mean, we can still refuse them service now, so that's essentially firing.
But we've heard these concerns from dispatch companies, that you guys are unable to do quality control because you can't fire people.
Right. I mean, that's true. However, we do have the ability to refuse dispatch service to them, which is essentially firing.
Yeah.
It just is a process.
Yeah. Oh, it's
It's a process.
You have to go through Eric?
I mean, we have to have, I mean, as a company, you have to look at how many complaints do you have? Do I wanna get rid of this guy just because I don't like the way he looks?
Sure.
I mean, I don't like the way he sounds, I don't like the way he talks, I don't like his accent, you know what I mean? Then you're looking into, you're looking at a couple of different angles of it, you know what I mean? You gotta have a reasonable cause for
Sure.
getting rid of them, and.
A short answer to that is Title 11 requires internal rules.
Uh-huh.
Okay, and it requires the dispatcher to adopt reasonable internal rules of which, those that will conduct themselves and things like that.
Okay.
So,
But I mean, it still sounds like it's a little bit more of a process, but it's not too far off of having at-will employees. And, in terms of why you might want to do it though, I mean, I'm kind of seeing like these permits, what if permits become like bar licenses, or we have to pay, Eric and I have to pay like $660 every year to remain lawyers, and then a company can hire us as lawyers. In the same way, we might get to a point where basically you have to have a permit to be a driver, and then you could hire them directly and fire them directly. But it sounds like you've got reasonable amount of ability to do that anyway.
I mean, we do. I mean, we do.
well, yes and no.
Yes
I
and
mean,
no,
if
but-
Title 11 could be clarified that at some point,
Yeah.
we can evolve away from one permit, one owner. That's where we've been at, one permit, one owner. And so,
I mean, why shouldn't a company a dispatch company, be able to purchase multiple permits and have drivers?
Well, it's kind of get back to the idea of a bar license though. Firms can't purchase bar licenses. Firms are, hiring lawyers who come with their license, and they're, active members of the bar, and they have to pay for that. Anyway, all right, let's keep going with this.
You won't be able to grab somebody by the collar and say, you're liable.
Right.
well, or the dispatch would have to lease.
And the only thing you're holding over it is their ability to drive, is their permit.
Yeah. Okay, let's keep going, John.
Still the John Show?
Yeah.
Okay, page 13.
Good discussion.
This is under section C, number 2. Actually, let's just talk about section C in general. It talks about, must meet certain requirements. It doesn't say that they have to have a chauffeur license, but they have to have it, right? Issuance or
I couldn't hear
renewal
what
of
pages on.
I'm sorry, we're on page 13.
That might be
subsection
switched by
C.
now. Is it still 13?
Yeah, 10, it's 1120-020C. issuance and annual renewal of non-transferable permits. Go on, John.
Okay, so just in general, you have these requirements, but it should say clearly somewhere that the applicant needs to have a chauffeur's license, and I do not see that.
Eric, to hold a non-transferable permit, you have to have a chauffeur's license.
And you do, you have to be an active chauffeur. You don't have to be a chauffeur to obtain the permit. In other words, you can bid on a permit, anybody can bid on a permit.
Oh, okay.
But before we issue the permit, you would have to get your chauffeur.
I guess that makes sense.
Well,
If
this
you wanna
says
see if you get
issuance
it.
and renewal, so generally you have to be a chauffeur. It doesn't say clearly here, which seemed odd, because next it says if you had it revoked, you're not eligible, so.
Yeah.
Are there other places in the code where it does say that clearly?
Well, there is a provision that says if you've had a permit revoked, you know, whatever, you can't apply for not for 12 months.
It says 2 years, but anyway, somewhere it should say clear, you gotta have a chauffeur. If that's true, then 2 says for the 5-year period immediately preceding, et cetera, and so on, no felony or misdemeanor conviction for these various things. And just to comparison, it's a 7-year period for a chauffeur's license. If you go to page 7, line 14. So one is 5-year, one's 7. I don't. So you can't get a chauffeur's license if you have these convictions in 7 years. This seems odd. It should match.
Sorry, where is that, John? You see the 7
That's
here?
fine. If you go to my page
Well, it was
27.
changed to 7.
Oh, 27.
Right. 27, line 14 of mine is under, it's a section E. And that was a change. What you just added was 5, and the new change made it 7.
That's a good point.
Okay.
That's it.
So we need to go back and change,
Go back to 5 or make both 7.
okay.
Okay, and then some of these things, and this is just a broad point. Where we have some of these misdemeanors, after SB 91, some of these all change. We just want to make sure that this is all consistent in the post SB 91 world.
I
What's a
would
felony,
defer
what's a
that to legal
misdemeanor?
from SB 91.
Any problem in the city, blame it on SB 91. So I guess to chat that, make sure that all makes sense. Because none of this changed from the previous version.
Yeah.
But our legal, what is a misdemeanor?
In some cases, right? I think most of it's had to do with sentencing, not actually changing.
Okay, and then, even larger, I guess, is we have all this here. To get a permit, a non-transferable permit, you have to be a chauffeur. And on page 27, it gives the requirements to be a chauffeur. So we're redundant here. We say it twice. So if you say you have to be a chauffeur, this stuff already. You can't get a chauffeur license if you have these criminal things. In 1, 2, and 3. So you could delete these to just say you have to have a chauffeur's license.
Yes, that's a good catch, John. This part on page 13, the permit application, that should match up the chauffeur license, background check, qualifications, disqualifications. So, in writing this, SB 91, and that doesn't have permits. It has the drivers and TEC. It doesn't have a permit for specific operations. So I guess that's why I'm just matching these up. So the chauffeur's license requirements here, that changed to 7 years, and those crimes, it matches state law that was established for TEC drivers. So it seems to me you should also change on page 13 the crimes and the periods of times to match as well.
Well, his
Or just
point
delete
is,
them.
could we just delete this, could we just delete this whole section so it's already covered elsewhere in the law?
Okay.
Well, make sure you add under C on page 13, must have chauffeur's license. That should be number 1. And if you've done
Oh.
that, then you have all these,
I think there's somewhere else in the
There-
book where it says you can't have
Oh,
a
somewhere.
permit without a chauffeur's license.
it should be here.
There is one, yeah, I guess, issue though, legacy permits are still transferable. And, although, you know, we're untapping the market, it's probably would be hard to transfer one, anybody can go and get a new non-transferable permit. They're still there and in existence, so if they transfer somebody that doesn't have to have a chauffeur's license, that wouldn't be a requirement for a transferable permit.
Oh,
Is
right.
that correct?
You could give you could give a transferable permit to someone without a chauffeur's license, and they could lease it to somebody with a chauffeur's license.
So where's that land? This section C deals with non-transferable permits. And if you have to be a chauffeur to get that.
Right. No, I think C still probably is redundant, right? Because that's only dealing with non-transferable permits.
Well, I think you could look at this, like, you could
Yep.
see if it's redundant, I say you delete it, if you need it, keep it.
Good, good catch.
Is there a minimum
Oh,
hours
excuse
of
me, these are all
operation
non-transferable.
per
Okay.
owner?
Yes,
with the
correct.
non-transferable permits?
Eric? I didn't hear.
Is there a minimum number of hours of operation for a non-transferable permit?
Well, right now it's universal, from the chauffeur, not the cab. Cab is about 24 hours a day. But the chauffeur's been 12 consecutive hours, 16 hours and 24 hours.
No, I mean per year.
A minimum
Is
number?
there a minimum number of hours that an owner of a non-transferable permit
No.
must drive it?
A non-transfer, that's being removed.
Okay.
That's proposed to be removed. That's later on, but it's proposed to be removed.
Yep.
It's on page 16 at the bottom, 11, 20, 37. So, the number of hours was removed, but the owner of the permit has to also drive it for at least 50% of the time that it's operated.
So that's half the time.
That's at the bottom.
Okay. We've got 5 minutes left, John, can we get through?
Moving right along, let's fly to page 19.
Okay.
Minor issue really, this is, near the bottom, this is, section A of 11.2.080. And it talks about dispatch system comprised of an operable two-way radio or computer, and I would just recommend we say a computerized dispatch system. One that is clear and it also matches what's on page 34, line 30, just to keep the words the same.
All right, let's keep going.
Then on that same section, every taxi shall be equipped. Then on the third sentence, it says if equipped with that. If you shall be, then you are equipped. So there should be an if.
Well, no, it says maybe, isn't it? Additionally, taxi cab
Every
may
tax,
also.
section A, mine says every taxi cab shall be equipped with a.
Well, that might be the old version. Here it says, you're talking about line 28, no, I guess you have different line
Yeah,
numbers.
line is-
It says, in addition, taxi cab may also be equipped with a digital dispatch system.
Well, it begins, that paragraph begins with every taxi cab
Oh, I
shall
see.
be equipped with those things. And then we go if.
Oh, I see what you mean,
Go ahead.
I think that, no, at page 34, oh, sorry, go ahead.
yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, we're on
I
page
think
9.
page 34, the dispatch system has to be one of these radio communication or computerized. You have to have one of those. So I think this shall be equipped with dispatch system, radio or computer. I kind of think it lines up, but it doesn't need clarification. I don't think it should be maybe, because you have to have dispatch system. That means one of those on page 34.
No, I see what you're saying here. In that third sentence, that whole first part, if equipped with blah, 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 is redundant because we're saying that they must have it. Yeah.
Well, you're saying they have to have one or the other, right?
Right.
Oh, I see, so,
Oh,
shall be
yeah.
equipped with
Right.
this or that. In addition, if it's got
If it's got this.
maybe
Right.
digital
Yeah, yeah.
dispatch system.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
Okay, keep going, John.
Okay, let's look at page 25. And this is, I got line 18, but it's section 5, read numbers though. But basically, I'm looking at the ages, and it says, one of the requirements is proof that the applicant is at least 19 years old. But a permit holder could be 18. Go back to page 12. And you can also be 18 for a dispatch license, but this says you have to be 19. I just recommend making them all the same. I'm on
Okay.
page 25, midway.
For us, it's page 24, line 46, number 5. Proof that the applicant is at least 19 years old. So what, yeah, what's the thinking there? You know, if other places in the code is 18, why is it 19 here?
It's just an old legacy age, and it's really not applicable because they're going to get insurance to drive based on first their ability, the driving record, and everything else. And outside of a family, most won't even get insurance until they're 23 or 25. So.
Yeah, are there any
I mean,
19-year-old
they
cab
have to,
drivers?
yeah, there are. But, like you said, most of them are family members. However, you can, a 19-year-old can go and drive a cab, but they are gonna pay, to get on the owner's insurance, the insurance company's gonna want extra money.
So why not an 18-year-old? If a 19-year-old can do it, is there any legal difference?
I don't know.
Between a 19-year-old and an 18-year-old?
I mean, from a legal standpoint, no, I can't see any difference between 19 and 18. They're both young teenagers at that point.
Yeah, I would be in favor of dropping that to 18. I mean, we let 17-year-olds join the U.S. military, we let
Right.
18-year-olds deploy, so they can drive a cab, sure, except for the show.
But the crawl under my, or whatever, brother, a 17-year-old can't throw trash in the dumpster.
I mean, you know, with the,
There was a
Oh,
famous
that's right.
case of John a couple years
Yeah.
ago. Yeah, Eric?
Well, I want to wait till Mr. Weddleton was finished, then I want to add one thing regarding that digital.
Well, I'm gonna keep going until people make me stop. We don't have any other hearing after this, so.
Okay, I just, continuing on that page, we have number 6 says you have to show a demonstrated ability to read, write, and speak the English language. In section C, just below, it says it again. In new word. It just seems redundant.
Where?
And that same page where you're on, just below that, where it says 19 years, number 6 says you have to show you can read, write, and speak English. Then new wording in section C, just after that, says the same thing again.
Where does it say it initially?
says it right at 6.
Right below where you have that
Exactly.
19 years old, the next item.
Oh, I see. Yeah. See that redundancy?
well,
Hold on. Yes, Mr. Gates?
I guess that 6 at page 25 is the applications to include that ability to demonstrate that. And C is saying that test is administered by transportation inspector. So it's a little repetitive. I suppose we could take out 6. They still have to pass the test.
Yeah, they may have to be combined in some way, but there are two different legal ideas in that.
Okay, that is fine.
Okay. Keep going, John.
Okay, page 30 on mine. The number, looking at number 4, it's a new number 4. Talks about the proof the applicant is a resident of or domiciled in the United States and that it has a physical office location with regular business hours in the municipality. be located within the municipality, allowing one to be located anywhere in the United States. So you gotta change the AM or downstairs.
I think, if I could comment, I think the idea was a dispatch company, a large company with, headquarters in the United States somewhere, maybe not municipality. The current code had to be a municipality. It could have an operations center that we call somewhere in there, but you must have at least one office location within the municipality. I guess we post or notices and
See, I think it's,
take your drivers.
this is something we have a continued conversation on. We've gone back and forth with dispatch companies on. I think my intention is that the dispatch company that has the Anchorage dispatch license has to be here in Anchorage. But they could contract for services, for dispatch services outside of the municipality or outside of the country. So, you see what I mean? So they have to have some legal entity or person that is here, that holds the license here. But when you call their company, it might get sent to, I don't know, Canada or Utah or something, and that's where the call center is. I think that's what we've been talking about with the industry.
Okay, but it's just your AM doesn't say that.
Okay.
We want to change that, so you could say
Yeah.
that a licensed dispatch company may use a service
Right.
that's outside of the line.
Does that make sense, Dean? I think that's what we're talking about, because I think that's what we're talking about. Yeah, 'cause I don't, yes, go ahead.
I don't know, as a driver, as somebody who's been in the industry for 26 years, I have a problem with that.
This is
Because,
some-
because,
Yeah.
literally speaking, if the dispatch service is here, how do you have a call center that's not here?
Well, I think part of it has to do with the digital dispatch.
Right.
And those services are not headquartered here in Anchorage. So we want to make sure that that requirement doesn't somehow preclude the use of those digital services outside of the municipality.
Okay.
Yes?
Yeah, it's better to have the main in Anchorage,
Yeah.
and then they could have like annex or second, just like a backup outside.
Yeah.
But if they're doing that outside, I don't believe it's here because the complaint. It's better to have here
Sure.
the main, and they could have annex. Like at the same time, they could communicate.
Sure. Well, this is interesting. This change was one that was asked for by the industry, by a different part of the industry. So, maybe we can go back and talk to them more about it. But I think what we're in agreement here is that to hold an Anchorage dispatch license, you must have some kind of physical presence, a person or a center here in Anchorage. And if the AM doesn't communicate that, then I would change the AM.
Because, I'm with you on that. Having backup call center
Yep.
or something like that outside of the country, okay, you know what I mean? But your main dispatch service
Okay.
should be,
Sure. Well, I think some of the dispatch companies, I guess there's only two, but, are talking about going to predominantly digital dispatch, where those services, and that computer center is not inside Anchorage.
well, both companies that are in existence now use DDS. And that's Digital Dispatch Service, or system, I can't remember which. But even though DDS is not here, the program is here in our office, on our computers.
Right.
And even if we have a database on the cloud, with cellular, then it's still, the database is still readily accessible here in Anchorage. Because there's an office here in Anchorage.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and through the chair, I'd like to clarify, that's both correct and not correct. Both companies do use digital dispatch systems, a Vancouver, Canada company. And for that reason, and we want to be careful, Title 11 has required the records to be retained. because that's an international company. It is not domiciled anywhere in the US, and so there's a section of 1140 that requires Grex to be maintained locally. And so even as we've been involved into that, we've been required. And even as and I'll use the other company, Checker Cab has evolved now to a digital system. The rate is actually going in a program there, DDS in Canada, you know, and then it's come back into its box and it's locked. And so, and we're supportive of that. I mean, we really are supportive of that kind of thing. But the intent of that language really was to allow, you read a lot about with the TMCs sometimes, if they overcharge my credit card or there's something they call 1-800, it's in the cloud, and there's nobody to help me. You know, the intent here of maintaining the office here is so that, because we're required to have numbers for complaints and who to help you in the cabs, and it's so that instead of calling 1-800, nobody cares, they can call 222 and get their problem solved. And so,
Lost and found.
so it's kind of important that we kind of, you know, watch through that, and you know, we support cost mechanisms to, you know, lower some of the costs and what have you to a degree, that, but while maintaining the local, you know, the local presence in some
And
fashion.
I'm okay with that, I just thought, I thought they were not contradicting each other.
Yeah.
And I thought that was bad.
Well, I might have to edit the AM.
Okay, and I'm getting close.
Great.
My page 35, this is the section C. And this may just be the industry lingo, but it seems to end, from a taxi cabs is not required to have radio identifiers from the taxis to the dispatch when on voice. Maybe that means something clear to everyone.
What line, John?
So I think you're sufficiently different than us, it's hard to follow. What's the, is it 1140-054?
It's 1140-053.
Okay.
And it's section, the new section C, if you believe it.
It says any dispatch company?
Yeah, it begins with that. And
Okay.
it just seems the.
GPS
So that
reads?
last sentence, have radio identifiers from the taxis to the dispatch when on voice, what the heck's that mean? What does it mean to be on voice?
What does it mean to be on voice? So, okay, so the cabs now, both companies are computerized dispatch, right? So my dispatchers or my call takers will take a call and they'll plug it into a computer and the computer dispatch the call out. Being on voice means that me as a dispatcher, I have a call taker that's writing the address down and I am keying a two-way radio and saying, you know, zone, you know,
Understand.
strip.
Got it. I just, as long as you guys know, because to me it's like, I went on voice contact with the cab or something, but they know what it means.
Yeah, going voice just means that it's not the computer doing the dispatch and it's an actual person.
So, then my page 37, this is 11.40.080.
Yep.
Dispatchers set the fares, there's no regulation.
Which one are we
Okay,
on?
no, that's fine, that's just a note to myself.
Okay.
Okay, but they set the fares, you go to the next page, 38, this is, section 5, A4.
Wait, 584.
Section 5, A4. Right, so we're down here talking about this fuel surcharge, shall be added to trip fare, and it's just, earlier in that other section, dispatcher to change rates every 30 days. Why even talk about a fuel surcharge? They can just add it in. The dispatcher's in charge of fares, right? They
The
set the
dispatch
fares.
company.
Right, dispatch company sets the fares. You could get rid of the fuel surcharge, you could set it.
We could,
regardless,
but
Right, why even discuss that?
And it's a very good question, through the chair. The ordinance allows, that's in the regs, and so the ordinance allows the commission 90 days to fix all of those. And then if we're not involved in any rate setting or what have you, they go to impose a surcharge, that would just be their deal. But we'll
that would be
get all
probably
cleaned up.
regulated by the market.
it can be
Right.
triggered
That's
right
fair,
now.
you factor that in, they can take it every 30 days.
Right, so we're getting out of the rate setting business, mostly. Why have fuel surcharge? Is that your point?
Right.
Yeah, I think it's almost like that whole section 4 go away.
But but the point is just that it's irrelevant now because they can set their own prices. Except that we haven't actually gotten completely out of the rate setting business because we're still regulating the curbside pickup rates in this ordinance.
So, I have a question.
And that would mean
about
that the fuel surcharge would still apply in those cases.
So I have a question about that.
Yep.
So, if curbside or not curbside,
Yep.
so as a dispatch company, there's no way for us to tell the meter to not, so we're gonna be allowed to surcharge, right? And how do we tell our meter to not surcharge someone if they do a street hire versus if it's a dispatch call?
Well,
I don't know if there's a way to do
Well,
that.
that's my point. My point is we leave this in here so that the surcharge would still apply for street hire, for curbside, as it
Right,
does now.
because the meter is gonna read whatever the
Right.
meter's gonna read.
Right, but for digital dispatch or for non-pickup, you can set whatever rate you want, so the fuel surcharge would be built in there.
But no, I understand what you're saying, but my thing is it going to the surcharge for curbside versus dispatch cars? So,
So you can still charge the surcharge in the dispatch car, in this dispatch.
right, but what about a curbside? So
Yeah.
if somebody walks out of a bar and gets into a cab,
No, that's my point. That's why I'm telling John that the fuel surcharge still has to stay in there.
Okay.
Because we are still setting the maximum rate at the curbside plus the fuel surcharge. You see what I'm
I mean,
saying?
I do see what you're saying, but are they gonna be equal?
They might be, but what we're saying is that you have to state the maximum rate, which includes the surcharge for the curbside. For the dispatch, you can go above that if you find a way to differentiate.
So we would have it on the side of the cab, it would have to be posted on the side of the cab, that the maximum rate per mile would be whatever.
Well, that's an interesting point. We're trying to get rid of a lot of the posting.
I mean, I get that.
And we have some legal opinions on this. We've gone through, this issue is continuously comes up because of the independent contractor nature of the owners, and what have you got, cab one that says, I want to set my own rate over here. We do have legal opinions, and we looked at this in 2014 very heavily, that say you can do that, you're an independent, go do what you want. At the same time, we have a legal opinion that says, as a dispatch company, by contract, which is supposed to have, they can control rates if you want to paint your car yellow and you want to subscribe to my service. It's a real deal. And I know for the consumer, I get what we're trying to do is get out of the rate setting business, but I just think that we should tread a little more carefully in how we define that. The TNCs, the control every aspect of the rate that's on your smartphone or on your device. I mean, right? It's all centrally controlled, and those who've been here long enough go back to the borough and the city, where one didn't regulate, and it was a free-for-all, and so it's kind of evolved. And I think where this technology is going very rapidly, and we're doing digital dispatch, is for more centralized administration and control. And so if we're gonna try to differentiate, and right now the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals out of Chicago says the single characteristic that differentiates a TNC from a cab is a curbside hail. That's it. And so all across America, and right now with rate settings, we're trying to work around that single definition. And so we just need to figure this one out, I think.
I want to do a
So,
little.
I mean, I have a question. So
Yep.
what if we had the ability to say, okay, so Friday and Saturday night between 2:30 and 4, our rates are this, you know what I mean, on the side of the cab somewhere, I mean, a specific, so that would be for a street hail, for, for a street hire, for dispatch, whatever.
Are we allowing them to do the 20% extra for curbside? trying to
Well,
remember. here.
this came up at the last work session, and
Right.
nothing stops a cab from saying, oh, you wear, this is subject to airline, oh, you wear a nice shirt, 20%, buddy, it's Friday at 9.
Well, that
Nothing
would be
stops
at
them
the-
from doing that.
But that
that's-
would be at the driver
Unless,
level.
yeah, but that's the drivers, you know, I mean, yeah, that's.
But I'm saying in the control of the dispatch company, if we could have it where, okay, so from this time to this time, we know it's busy because
Yep.
it's bar closed.
Right, and that's what we.
So-
Yeah, and we are, actually, yes, we are allowing you to do surge pricing at 20%.
And so then we would have to have that marked on the cab. The cabs would have to be marked that way from a time frame
Yeah,
or?
they're required to have the rates on them, and
Right.
what we were required, and I was looking at this last week with the ordinance, some cities have electronic rate boxes actually on the side, outside the doors,
Smart.
that we would have to go and require electronic rate setting devices if we're gonna go to this kind of stuff, and irrespective of what dispatch companies say, we need to look at, you know, I understand Yellow's disabled their app now, so
Our
everything
app
is
works just fine.
curbside hail. And so, you know, there's, and these are enforcement issues. So a lot of these are enforcement monitoring issues of our officers. But when it comes to the rate setting, we just preach
So-
caution
The,
in how we structure this.
So again, to have this sort of more philosophical discussion, the reason we decided to try to keep rate setting with curbside hail is because practically speaking, there isn't much of an opportunity to compare prices when you are hailing a cab, let's say late at night. You know, right there at the curbside, you're not gonna have a detailed discussion of rates. On the other hand, when you pull up Uber or Lyft or hopefully one of the cab apps, once they get there, you can see what the price is going to be. I mean, this is the sort of the fundamental advantage that Uber and Lyft have over most cabs. You can see, I'm going here to here, here's the price. And if the price is too high, then you're like, okay, I'm not gonna do that. Then you switch to the other app, and you see if it's lower, and if it's not, then you might hail a cab or get a bus or do whatever you're gonna do. But you have the ability to, before you get in that vehicle, before you stop that vehicle, before you have that conversation, you have the ability to figure out, to do some kind of price comparison. Or let's say you're a person sitting at home who needs to go to the grocery store, you don't have a car, same kind of thing. You can pull up and look at multiple options to get to Fred Meyer and rate compare. But you, practically speaking, can't do that at the curbside. Yes?
I mean, I agree with that to the certain extent that it's not readily available right in front of their face.
Yeah.
However, they can pick up the phone, call Yellow Cab or Checker Cab, either one, and get an estimate. We plug in,
But that's not,
well, I mean, we don't.
that's not
necess-
curbside, right?
But we
I mean,
don't
that's-
necessarily have to dispatch a cab to them.
Right,
We can give them the estimate and they can walk out and get any cab.
yeah.
You know what I mean? So then they still have the wherewithal to get the prospective price.
I think we're also trying to be practical about who gets in cabs at the curbside. So let's say someone is leaving Alaska Native Medical Center, for example. They walk out of the emergency room, there's a cab right there, and they want to get in that cab and get home. That person is less likely to do a bunch of price comparison besides just hailing that cab and getting in that cab. And that is why we are, at this point, still setting a maximum price for that kind of curbside. But we are not doing that with the other
I
forms of
mean,
dispatch.
like I said before, I mean, when I first said something, the only problem that I see is I'm not sure how, as a dispatch company, we could differentiate. Because if the meter is set, the meter is set.
Right.
So,
Well,
I mean,
that-
I don't know
that's-
how we could,
That's a technical challenge I think you're going to
Right.
face. And here's the thing, what you can't do is let all your meters float, because now you've violated the curbside
Right.
portion of the ordinance. So
Okay,
practically
right.
speaking, with the current technology, it might be that we are going to give you the freedom to float your rates, but you don't have technological ability to do it yet.
I mean, as far as Yellow Cab is concerned, this is mostly theoretical discussion because we
Yeah.
do not intend to surcharge.
Or raise your rates.
Right.
Good.
This is, we.
Well, they could do an
we-
ad, you know, and that would really, the way, and again, at the last meeting, we talked about it, they could program, they could do a lot that they don't do. For when you want a Slim Jim call or a jump start, they could program an attribute into their meter, and then they could hit 3, this is a jump start, or if it's a 20% surcharge, they can program an attribute into their computer that says this is a deal. But what she's saying, and even what we're saying is, is we can't discriminate in any way. And even with an attribute, it's up to the driver to decide whether to push the button. It's totally up to the driver. So they pull up outside the gas light, and Eric comes out in the suit, and he said, man, this guy looks like he could pay and everything. Boom, 20%. We just hit it in effect, and there's no control over those kind of things. And so, and it's,
Well, I mean, I guess the theory of the control is that he would then use Lyft, right? I mean, maybe
And
not
they
that
could.
time,
They-
but the next time he would use Lyft because you would have jacked up his price. What I am concerned about, so I'm less concerned about a guy in a nice suit that comes out of the bar. I am more concerned about what I was saying, a vulnerable elder, let's say, at Alaska Native Medical Center. And I,
Or the drunk 21-year-old that comes out of the gas light.
well, I'm more concerned about the vulnerable elder than
I mean,
the
well,
drug
I mean,
21-year-old.
you got a young girl
Yes.
that's, they're
Yeah, that's
vulnerable
fair.
as well, you know what I'm saying? Some of these girls,
fair.
they go out and party, or they come in from the village and they, where their village is dry. And they come in here and of course they're allowed to drink and then they overindulge.
Sure.
Way overindulge.
So,
You can't price shop. You can't price shop. You can't call a cab, hail a cab at the curb,
And
and then
price
say,
shop.
wait a minute,
Right.
and price shop. You
can't
can't
do
do
that.
that. They're not gonna wait for
Nope.
it. And so there's,
are we moving towards where we want to take away that ability to surcharge on the cabs? I mean, that,
I'm not saying that that's a policy call, but I think that the administration is likely to oppose even the elimination of the rate caps on the cabs, excluding discussion about a surcharge. For a variety of these reasons being discussed. We should have further discussion. I think
I mean,
there's some
we
further
do go-
discussion that will
We
take
do go,
place.
like you said, to the digital display of the rate.
Well, and it is, and so,
okay.
so on the rate, I think there's gonna be further discussion on the rates in that section.
Okay, all right, well, that's enough for me today.
If I could add
John's
one,
got a last thing. We're gonna have the workshop on this too, if you don't
Okay,
mind.
but this will be done, and then you'll have.
if I could add to the chair, oh, I'm sorry.
John's got two more
Let me
things.
just finish these real quick, and then you can decide what to do. So 5 page 38, but it's section 5, for the thing, and then section 4, says, which we've been talking about, fuel surcharge, we don't want to say shall be added.
Maybe.
In some cases not, so we want to do with that.
So
And then
change
it's-
shall to may.
if that's appropriate. And then, the next page, B, part 2, talks about the, annual renewal fee. And I just wonder if that should be an ordinance, you should, because then you have to change this ordinance every time, and you have a fee schedule, and then when you prorate it, just change this to 1/2 of the annual.
Well, through the chair, the fees used to be an ordinance. They used to be there, and this gets back to when gas was up at $4.50 a gallon, and there were a whole host of other issues. And through the 2014 changes, it was felt by the Assembly at that time, by moving all of the fees to the regulations, and the commission could be petitioned by either the owners or the dispatch, and the commission could hold hearings on those kinds of things, on all the rates, and because we've been a self-funded office, and then amend the regulations and forward those, with the record to the assembly for consideration. And so they were moved out of code and put into regulation.
But
And
now
so-
they're in reg, what we're looking at here has the fee in regulation.
Code, has
Is it
a
code?
code, it's been in code.
Which one?
So we're looking at, subsection B on page 38 and 39 of our ordinance.
Yeah, they're
It has
all
been
in
set-
regulations.
Has been set, well, no, it's in code, it's already at $1,700 per year, and we're dropping it to $1,425. And I guess his point is, why is this number even in code? Why don't we just allow, is that what you're saying, John? Pull it out of code and let it be
Yeah,
set by
put it in the fee,
regulation?
'cause I don't think we want to look every time they change it, twice a year?
No, well, there's two sections on fees, the fees paid to the municipality, and then the fees paid among the industries, which are the rate caps and whatever.
Okay, so the regulations set the ones inside the industry.
You know, and the regulations set our fees paid to the municipality.
But code is already set those fees here.
Well, yes, if by now it is, you're changing it, yeah.
Well, no, it already is, because it was 980 or whatever, and then it was 1700, and now.
I'm sorry.
But I understood John's
Regulations
question.
1110.009 is Anchorage Municipal Code of Regulations.
Oh.
Yeah,
So
why
it's
is it in
ordinance,
regulations
it's amendment.
versus in
Oh,
the
oh,
code?
never mind, so you don't have to come to us to change these. I'm good then.
Well, ultimately, still, the commission could make the amendment, but it still, this goes to the assembly. The assembly had, I believe, 30 days to say no.
That's fine.
So we could pass this ordinance, and then the commission could change it back?
The fees, could amend the fees after public hearings and whatever, and it would still go back to the assembly.
Okay.
Yes. All regulations that are adopted by the commission have to be approved by the assembly. That's a big difference between how the state does their regulations. They don't have it approved by the municipal assembly.
Okay. All right, well, let's see here. Eric, you said you had one more thing?
Yeah, I did, and I flipped the page out of it, but it's on the digital equipment. We want to make sure on the definition, when we say if equipped with digital equipment, that it's required to capture all the data, all of it. And the reason being, there's two reasons for this. Is one, the ordinance gets rid of trip sheets in the cabs, which everybody's pretty supportive because this digital age can require it. But at the same time, we got both dispatch companies have their computers programmed to not allow a driver to enter a destination address, you know, to even look or estimate fares or do the things we're trying to do. And it's also done on one, it was purpose, you know, one dispatcher just upgraded all their equipment and real, and specifically excluded that because he didn't want to know. And so we can't have it both ways. I mean, we can't, and we strongly support requiring that equipment to capture the data.
What
So
page is that
you
on?
get in a cab at the airport and they turn on the meter, the GPS, it has to have GPS data that captures everything, and it's done. And so we need to add, we would ask that be added to
What do you mean when
the
you say
definition of
capture?
GPS, of using GPS or digital equipment.
So two things. One, what page is this on? You need to
Oh,
say?
yeah, that's, page, it's my 21, it starts on line 46 on page 20, for cabs equipped with software-based metering, using GPS, you know, or location service. We restructured that, they're required to capture all the data.
That should be there.
But
And
isn't
then,
that what C does?
And then, well, see, now it says or, but it doesn't, you know, it uses it for, but it needs to require it so that they can't program to not. We ran into that, and I tell you, we ran into it yet again recently. We were looking at the TNC fee that the state was seeking to impose, or, you know, we were looking at the data, we were asked to do some research, and we found out, we just came up with a lot of interesting information and found that it was purposely being programmed to strike the information and not capture it.
Which
And we would
information?
also ask that, and this, that somehow that all cabs be required to use the meter and not operate outside of the meter.
when do they ever operate outside the meter?
All the
There's
time.
drivers that do flat
And
rates.
that's under a contract, you know, we're putting
Oh.
language in contract, but, you
Well,
know,
flat rate though, you're talking about getting rid of flat rates?
you know, I'm not talking about getting rid of flat rate, but you know, the history of cabs is meters.
Yeah.
And using a meter. You know, the cab flat rate all the time from every hotel to the native hospital, and then write any amount they want on a voucher, you know, and submit it. And so, the two things that have never been in code that we've supported and which continues was, one, they'd be required to use the meter unless the company has negotiated this, like the school district has a contract and whatever the terms of the contract are. And that can be embedded in the computer as an attribute. And second, that the cabs be required to take credit cards. You know, it's one of the biggest complaints. There's no requirement in code that cabs have to take credit cards. And so, you know, we get them all the time where they want the cash, so they put hats over the yellow cab has nice new credit card machines, and they put hats over them, and, you know, say it's
They're not
broken, or
working.
put signs up saying, I don't take credit cards, and it's just a matter of, you know, policy that should be in code.
And we tell every customer that calls that if the driver says that they're not accepting credit cards, call us. Because I'm gonna park
And
them.
they do it all the time.
Why do they do that?
Because they want the cash.
Is it that or they don't wanna pay your $5
No,
or
it's because they want cash.
No,
It's
they're
a
not paying
5%.
that
No, we
surcharge.
only charge $1. They don't have, the company bears that burden, not the drivers or their permit owners.
Because they don't wanna declare.
Yeah, they don't, if they run a credit card, they have to declare it on their taxes. There's a paper trail, so they have to declare it on their taxes. And so.
So you guys aren't opposed to that requirement?
Credit.
We don't care. I mean, as a dispatch manager and the person that is in charge of the complaints at Yellow Cab, when they call me to complain and say they didn't want to take my credit card, my first question to the driver is, what was wrong with your credit card machine? When did you call dispatch to tell us that there was something wrong with your credit card machine? Who do you think you are to tell people that you don't accept credit cards? We accept credit cards.
Okay.
So, you know, in this day and age, as a driver, as a part of a company, as the person that has to listen to the customer screaming on my other end of my phone, I don't know why anybody would refuse a credit card. It's money.
I will tell you why, and I'm gonna tell you why, and I meant to bring it because these doggone cab owners rip these drivers off every week. Now, I got my latest one, this is both a permit owner and a cab owner, owed his driver $1,000. And here's the process, and this is where, and it's extremely frustrating, the process is, all of the independent contractor owners, drivers will take credit cards that do take them, right? The dispatch company knows immediately, the chauffeur, who took the credit card. But the same dispatch company says, you're an independent contractor, we want nothing to do with you. You take all of your credit card charges, submit them to your vehicle owner. And then your vehicle owner is gonna turn around and submit all those charges to us, and we're gonna verify, and we're gonna pay your vehicle owner, and then you go see your vehicle owner for the money. But you know what? The vehicle owner didn't take the credit card, the chauffeur did. And we have been steadfastly warning the dispatch, citing them. There's no prohibition in law with TNC. This is why people love Uber and Lyft, because of all the deals in the cab. But anyway, what happens is then the vehicle owners don't pay the chauffeur till they feel like it. There's no code requirement that says they have to reimburse the chauffeurs. None of them. We're dealing with a very heavy immigrant population that they don't understand contract laws. They don't understand they got to hire a lawyer and do this. So what happens is, and the latest one, this is a permit review, owes his driver $1,000, and the driver comes to us, and when we get involved in it, they've got the records. Here's all my credit card copies, here's everything I've got. The owner won't pay me. I call the owner up because I've got the documentation, and we have other ways to verify it. I said, listen, we got an issue here that you owe chauffeur X dollars. Yeah, so what? I go, well, what do you mean, so what? You owe it? No, this one doesn't speak enough English, and I don't like the way he cleaned my cab. I'm not paying him. Now this poor cab driver has got kids to feed, is stuck. You know what? You got to go pay $100, file a lawsuit, you know, go do all this and wait, and then they can take your little small claims deal, declare it civil. They can move it over to district court, tie it up for, you know, and this is the way many owners treat the drivers.
I mean,
And we go through
it goes
this.
vice versa as well. There's a lot of drivers that owe their owners that don't pay their lease. I
Well,
mean,
but-
granted, then they don't get to drive the car for very long, but they still owe them the money.
What's your enforcement mechanism against?
None. We have no authority, but what I do when it's an owner that does that, I take the car off the road.
Right.
I have no authority to do that. They threaten me to call the mayor or the municipal, and I give them the number. You call the mayor and tell him why your cab is off the road, you know what I mean? And then we agree to act as an intermediary, to accept the money, and then we get the driver in and we pay. But it really should be spelled out. I mean, this is one of the deals that, it's a deal, and that's why they should take credit cards.
Yeah.
But in this day and age, the dispatch companies should be willing to establish a relationship with a chauffeur, which they're allowed, and say, you know what, we get paid every other day as those charges are settled. We know who you are. Go open a bank account. We'll transfer that money to your account every
We don't do
Friday.
electronic funds transfers to
You know,
anyone.
and so, or whatever they want to do.
They're all issued as a check.
But
Why?
there's a steadfast refusal of, you know, really dispatch companies wanting to engage it, but the dispatch company takes the money from the driver, not from the owner. The
Okay.
owner's the, all right, anyway, that's what those are areas that we have concerns with, we want to work, especially as we evolve to digital, the digital platforms, where I think the largest company will be going to next year. There's some contractual things taking place, but looks like there'll be further evolution as we get into next year. One is doing it now, but they sort of need to be prodded.
All right, I'll give you the last word, then we're gonna close.
So, okay, so as for the billing, we issue the cab owners, the permit holders, or the operators, I should say, whether they're leasing or owning, we issue them a check once a week. They drop off the charges once a week, we issue them once a week. And so, while I'm not adverse to having a driver drop their charges off, I mean, it does create a significant number increase in the number of accounts that we have and checks that we have to cut. And so I would say I don't want them dropping their stuff off every day. I mean,
Well, that's not-
right
But
now, the owners
here's-
are allowed to drop, right now, the owners are allowed to drop once a week.
So I guess the point here, though, is.
I understand what he's saying. I mean, I
Right.
wouldn't, I
You
don't.
pay the owners, you don't pay the drivers.
Right, because we have a contract with the car, not the driver.
But there's nothing, what he's saying is there's nothing in code preventing you from setting up a contract with the driver.
And see, and I would disagree with that, they already know. They run the credit card. They see what the charge is, they see it was chauffeur 1, 2, 3, 4. They know
I
how
mean,
much it is.
I'm not disputing that.
You know what, they know it's good, and the chauffeur doesn't have to bring those charges in. They could simply, the dispatch company could be proactive once a week and print out a statement of charges. There you go, chauffeur, here's your statement of charges, you know, that we have. Why wouldn't they want to pay a chauffeur that their own records show they owe the money?
This is not addressing the ordinance, we have done this.
Okay,
We're
so,
already
but
way
I mean,
over time.
again, it's also speaking to only credit cards. What about charge accounts?
Okay.
What about Medicaid?
We'll deal with that in a future
It's me.
meeting.